So we're here at the Barn Theatre in Cirencester. I'm here with Paul Mayhew Archer, who is going to be doing a performance at the Bingham Hall very shortly, and it's all in aid of Parkinsons UK. Paul, welcome to the Barn.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, it's in aid of Parkinsons UK because I have Parkinsons. And what I do is I go around the country doing my show, Incurable, Optimist, because, I think Parkinson's is funny. And I suppose I think it's funny because I've worked in comedy for about 30 or 40 years, and I find most things funny. I used to co-write The Vicar of Dibley, and I thought that working in a village with a vicar was funny, and now I find Parkinson's funny, and I just want to write jokes about it and make people laugh, because that helps to cheer us all up. We try to talk about it as a Parkinson's condition rather than a disease, because once you start using the word disease, people tend to think of it as being contagious. And as far as we know, it isn't contagious. I mean, actually, we'll soon know if it's contagious, because if the audience come and a lot of them go away with Parkinson's and didn't have it at the start of the evening, we'll realise that, But so far, fingers crossed, all the shows I've done don't appear to have led to large numbers of increased people with Parkinson's.
And the Bingham Hall in Cirencester, is it somewhere that you've been before? Have you performed in Cirencester before?
I haven't performed in Cirencester before. I have been to the Bingham Hall in Cirencester before because, in a strange, small worldy way, our son Simon produced This Country. And there was a special screening of This Country in the Bingham Hall because it's set in Cirencester.
So it really does run in the family then, the artistic talents. From producing to writing.
To writing, yes. And I was very lucky. I got a job in radio, many, many moons ago. And I produced a show called I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. And so I started writing jokes for that. And then got the chance to write a sitcom called An Actor's Life for Me, which did very well on radio and transferred to BBC One television, where it didn't do very well, and it got axed after one series. But that's when I learned that you don't actually need millions of viewers. You only need one viewer of your programme if that viewer's name happens to be Richard Curtis, because he saw it and he liked it, and he therefore asked me if I'd like to co-write a series he was developing about a woman vicar. And so that's how.
And the rest is history.
The rest is a very lovely and wonderful history for me, because it was a joy to work on. Absolutely.
It's sort of the jewel in the crown of British comedy, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's very kind of you. It was just a wonderful thing to do. And Dawn, if your star is nice, you will have a really lovely time. And our star was fantastically nice. And also, it's one of those programs where it threw up a sort of an unknown who became wonderfully well known, and that was Emma Chambers, who played Alice. And she never realised quite how adored she was in her lifetime. She was absolutely...
What a performance.
Yes,
so the two of them were just... Well, actually, there isn't a weak link in that cast.
No, we were extremely lucky, really, in the casting, and it does make all the difference. Trevor Peacock, who played Jim, was basically a character who said no, yes. And he did it absolutely brilliantly. And he came and turned on the Christmas lights one year in Abingdon, where we lived. And as he went through the town, people would come up to him and say, "Go on, say it." And he'd do this no, yes thing. And his wife was with my wife, following on behind, and she kept saying to my wife, he's done the National Theatre, he's been with the Royal Shakespeare Company, But all he was remembered for, she felt. But he was delighted to be remembered for anything. And
well, I've had the similar situation with both Les Dennis and Matthew Kelly. Matthew Kelly in particular, who comes from sort of a long-running career as an actor.
Yes.
But he's known for Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be in Stars Your Eyes. And that's all people remember them for.
Yes.
So, but, isn't it great just to be remembered for something?
Absolutely. It's wonderful to be
And the
remembered.
Vicar of Dibley it's so quotable. Absolutely. There's so many moments in that programme that are iconic for British television.
Yes.
I'd love to know what is the most memorable moment for you.
Oh, the most memorable moment for me is, I think it's the wedding of Alice and Hugo, partly because Richard and I never wrote together. We would have a conversation on the phone, and then one or other of us would write the first draft and then send it to the other one. And we had one of these conversations, and we were talking about the wedding episode. And Richard said, so just write all the wedding jokes I didn't write in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. And I said, righty-ho. And I put the phone down. And my wife, Julie, helpfully said, but he wrote all the wedding jokes. There were 4 weddings. And so I spent days pacing around the house trying to think of wedding jokes. And when I came up with some, I was so excited, I can't tell you. So that was the most challenging moment and the most rewarding moment, I think.
And what a payoff that episode has in the end as well,
Yes.
which is it's brilliant, exquisite work, and it's such a pleasure to have a writer here at the Barn Theatre. Do you know much about the Barn at all?
I don't. No, tell me about it.
Oh, I will. Well, we've been here since 2018. I don't know if you've been to see the space, but we're a producing theatre. Every show that you see at the Barn is something that we have produced ourselves.
Fantastic.
And we produce up to 7 shows a year here in probably the toughest climate for theatre.
Yes.
Yeah, it's particularly tough. But as you can see, we're a young and dynamic team here, sort of working incredibly hard to do what we think is so valuable in bringing theatre to these regions outside of London. And the theatre industry is very London or city-centric, but it's beautiful to come to this neck of the woods to create original theatre 52 weeks of the year, really.
That is absolutely marvellous. And also that you support other things that are going on in the town.
Well, that's it. Well, as soon as we heard about this Parkinson's UK event and that you were coming to Cirencester to put it on, we just wanted to get involved. Talk to me about your relationship with Parkinson's UK. You have Parkinson's. You tell me you find it funny, but obviously the work that Parkinson's UK does is extraordinary. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Well, they both. Well, there are 2 things about Parkinson's. There's the search for a cure and search for medication that helps people with Parkinson's, and that requires lots of work, because it's James Parkinson, after whom it's named, was the person who identified it, and that's over 200 years ago. And we're still waiting for a cure. COVID, they got a cure basically within a year or a year and a half. So we are sort of wondering why we haven't got a cure for Parkinson's yet. But on the other hand, the other thing that they have to do as a charity is to look after people who have Parkinson's and try and manage the symptoms and create communities. So I'm coming in support of the Cirencester branch of Parkinson's UK, because there are about 300 odd local groups, and we get together in a local group and support each other, and the charity supports us in what we do. And so, because the thing about Parkinson's is it's a really weird condition because it has so many different symptoms. It's to do, we think, with the brain, though it may start in the gut. We're not entirely sure. And it affects us in hugely different ways. For example, one of the symptoms is one of the symptoms is loss of memory. So one of the symptoms is constipation, and another symptom is loss of the sense of smell. And given my constipation, I regard the loss of my sense of smell as a positive bonus. But also there are all sorts of other symptoms you can get, which is one of the ones that I've got recently is a thing called freezing, which means that I can be walking perfectly normally, and suddenly I come to a doorway, and I sort of have difficulty negotiating my way through the door, and suddenly I totter forwards, and get stuck, and then have to sort of try and get myself out of it and go through the doorway, and but what it reveals is that people are incredibly helpful. I remember struggling to get across Paddington Station, and I had a case with me, and a bloke sort of said, "I'll take your case for you," and he sort of carried it across the station. You know, I mean, I never saw it again, but it was a lovely gesture, I thought, and so we have all these difficult things to sort of try and to control and try and deal with, and mostly we deal with it in wonderfully sort of optimistic fashion, it seems to me. I've got a friend, Sally, and the first time I met Sally, I said to her, when did you first notice the tremor? Because she has a tremor. I don't have a tremor. And lots of, a third of people with Parkinson's don't have a tremor. Sally has a tremor. And I said, what was the first thing, when did you first notice that you had this tremor? And she said, well, you know, I think the first time I actually noticed it was when I was putting a condom on. I said, really? Good Lord above, that's extraordinary. And she said, yes. And, you know, it was quite embarrassing because people were watching, and I was filming it as well. And then she saw the look on my face, and she said, sorry, I should have explained I used to teach sex education. Yes. So, but anyway, there are all these different symptoms and different attitudes that we find. And so I talk about that in my show. And I find that people respond very positively to it. I was doing the show up in near Liverpool, and a man came up to me at the end of it, and he said, I was diagnosed 5 days ago, and you have just stopped me worrying. And that was really, you know, touching moment. And I really believe in the power of comedy to lift people. In fact, the Vicar of Dibley has saved a life.
Tell us about that.
Several years ago, a woman came up to me, and she said, I want to thank you for saving my life. And I said, why? And she said, well, I was so depressed at one time, I thought of ending it all. And then the Vicar of Dibley came on, and she said, I found myself laughing so much that I decided life was worth living after all.
Incredible.
And I remember two thoughts going through my head. One was that this was one of the most humbling moments of my life. And the second thought was, thank goodness it was one of the funnier episodes, because otherwise she'd have been a goner. But anyway, that's the sort of joke I tell in the story. It's absolutely true, this story, and that's the sort of thing. And actually, it may seem quite a black joke, but actually, strangely, people with serious illnesses tend to have quite a black sense of humour, and I think it's really important that we cherish this sense of humour and allow us to have these sort of moments of black humour, because, you know, life's difficult enough with illnesses, and so allow us to laugh whenever we can. I do stuff for Maggie's, the cancer support charity, and because my mum had cancer. And so I believe in the power of comedy to help with that. Dame Deborah James, I think, was a wonderful example of how humour can help with all sorts of serious illnesses. In fact, my message is, I suppose, that I want people to take serious illnesses less seriously at times, so that we can appreciate the comedy as well, because it cheers us up and gives us that sense of being able to struggle on.
Well, it sounds like the audience at the Bingham Hall are in for a treat. And what would it mean to you to sort of fill that place up? And what would that do for the Cirencester branch of Parkinson's UK?
Well, for the Cirencester branch of PUK, it will mean raising a lot of money that will be able to help both the charity in terms of research, but also local members in subsidising them to get places and join classes, exercise classes and things like that, which are very important. For me, I absolutely adore performing, and I'd forgotten I used to perform at university and then hadn't performed for 40 years, and
I can tell you're a natural.
well, that's very kind of you. Well, I've started doing it again, and I absolutely adore it, and it's been a sort of and I've met such people and had such adventures as a result of having Parkinson. In a weird way, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. And I know there will come a time when I will feel I'd rather not have Parkinson's, but not yet. And I've had it 12 years now, and I'm still going strong. And I hope that people will come to the show and laugh a lot and enjoy themselves as much as I do.
Well, that optimism is surely going to be incredibly infectious. It already is here, and it will be
Not infectious, obviously. No.
in a very different way. The optimism is
Yes,
infectious.
yes.
We are so proud to support Parkinson's UK and support Paul on his performance at the Bingham Hall. We're a little bit jealous it's not happening at the Bath Theatre, but anything we can do to help, we're obviously very, very keen to support in any way. And I look forward to seeing you there because I will be hosting. I'll be your master of ceremonies for the night.
Absolutely, brilliant.
So I look forward to it, and thank you so much for coming to visit us
Not
today.
at all. Thank you very much indeed for all you're doing for us. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All good?
Good. Happy? Is there any